Star Bowling with the top bowling stars of America. Brought to you by Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Top Star Bowling from the Hoffman Lanes here at Hoffman Estates, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, Illinois, near the O'Hare Airport. I'm Jack Buck, introducing the participants on the program today who are going for a slice of the $40,000 in prize money that is tied in with this series. $1,000 for the winner, $500 for the loser, along with a very attractive LaSalle wristwatch for each of the participants. And this is a three-game match, total pins count. We've had some wonderful shows in the past. Some fine names have appeared, other fine names to appear in the future. Right now, the gentleman who holds the fort in the King of the Hill competition is the gentleman who is from Kansas City, St. Louis, and now Joplin, Missouri. And last week, he knocked off Don Carter, and he is Carl Richard. Carl, good to see you again.
Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here.
Listen, after whipping Carter, you should breeze through the rest of the series here.
Well, I hope you're right, although I'd rather be bowling with this fellow than against him, Jack.
What was your series last week? 680?
679.
679. Quite a series, and you might need something of that sort today to win another match.
Oh, I'm sure I'll have to bowl well.
Let's meet his opponent, a fellow who is from Cleveland originally, now living in Detroit. One of the great names over the years in bowling, Mr. Steve Nagy. Steve, nice to have you with us.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Where's that Russian hat that you wear all the time?
Oh, I don't use it in the wintertime.
You don't need it now, huh?
Not now.
Not quite cold enough.
Not here. It's pretty warm right here.
Huh? Steve, I know that you've done a little bit of practicing on the lanes. How did things go for you?
Well, good and bad. And practice bad right now, but I feel I got a good line on it.
Pretty much at home, huh?
That's right.
Ready to go?
It's ready.
Good luck to you, Steve.
Thank you.
And to you, Carl
Thank you,
Richard.
Jack.
And are you folks all set for Top Star Bowling? Carl Richard and Steve Nagy, and we're underway. Carl Richard won the toss, and so Steve Nagy will be our leadoff man here today. On and 29. His first delivery. In there. Can't start any better than that. Carl Richard, who had a 679 to vanquish Don Carter, comes up to try to match the strike thrown by Mr. Steve Nagy. In the past, we've had an opportunity to tell you a bit about Carl Richard, who is from Joplin, Missouri, nicknamed the Rancher. A little bit outside, never did get to the head pin, and leaves the 1-2-8. We'll have to come back and try for that spare. Carl was a member of the team champions in the ABC tournament in 1958, finished second in the doubles in 49. His partner was Jim Vaughn that particular year. And he has finished quite high in Masters competition, never has won it. BPAA All-Star Finals twice, the World's Invitational Finals twice. That's the sort of bowler you're watching here. And there goes the 8-pin. You never quite be too sure if that ball isn't turning over properly for you, that 8-pin will fail to go down if that ball doesn't drive through. Carl had plenty on it. So he gets his spare in the first frame. And Carl counts 19 in the first frame as he leaves a 5-pin. That ball failed to drive through there for him. The last time we saw Carl a week ago, he was throwing quite hard. He increased his speed as he went along, was in the pocket most of the time. Had a couple of splits that could have hurt him. But Don Carter wasn't able to get too close. Don bowling 625 to Carl Richard's 679. And in the last match, Carl threw 23 strikes. So 2 spares in a row. Let's see if Steve Nagy can get off in front in this contest by getting a double. You're looking at a fellow who was twice voted the bowler of the year. And and the 7-pin. That ball hooked quite a bit. He played that a good deal more outside than most of the bowlers we have seen over the past weeks, including the ladies, by the way. And another ladies' match is in the offing for you as we go along from week to week in Top Star Bowling. Shirley Garms and Laverne Carter. So they each have a spare in the second frame, and Steve Nagy has a 1-pin lead. He goes back over to 29, where he got the strike to get him started. Here at the microphone with us, and as a statistician, and to act as the bowling expert he is, Jerome Whiting Harris, a member of the Brunswick Advisory Staff. You'll be hearing from Whitey as we go along. Nagy on a spare is also on the head pin and leaves the 4-7. Hit that one a bit too full. Just as Carl Richard was a member of the team champions, so was Steve Nagy. I don't recall, were they on that team at the same time, Whitey?
They weren't on the same team, but it was from out of our hometown, Jack, St. Louis.
St. Louis, the same outfit, but they never did bowl together on the team champions. And all of that would be by the boards nonetheless here. This is what counts today. There's the 4-7. A strike and 2 spares for Steve Nagy. Carl Richard has started with 2 spares. This is an ABC sanctioned event. These lanes have been carefully checked by ABC representatives. And this series is certified by the American Bowling Congress. That's the same sort of a ball that we have seen Carl Richard throw for so many strikes, 23 in his first appearance here on Top Star Bowling. And along with these two, those who have tuned in regularly have seen such fellows as Don Carter and Bill Tucker and Glenn Blakesley, Bill Pace, Buzz Fazio, and Dick Hoover, who held up for about 4 weeks, Don Ellis, Andy Rogoznica. The best have come your way, and more to come. A double. 2 spares, 2 strikes. Let's see what Nagy does. He's outside again. That's what he almost did the previous time, but he did come up and catch the head pin. He said at the outset when we chatted with him that he thought he had found the line. He started with a strike and 2 spares, and going for the 1-2 for his 3rd spare in a row. He is down in the match as a result of the double thrown at him by Carl Richard. Steve Nagy, from Pennsylvania originally, gained his bowling fame in the city of Cleveland, now lives in Detroit. He's a fine instructor, this fellow, and plays a good deal of golf. His records go back to 51 and 52. That ball did some work, too. Mr. Harris told you about the working ball that Carl Richard has delivered. That ball did an awful lot of labor for Steve Nagy, giving him his 2nd strike of the game, giving him also 76 through the 4th frame. Carl Richard has a double going for him. He has 39 through the 2nd with a 3-bagger. Nagy has 76 through the 4th with a strike up. Now Carl on 29, looking for 4 in a row. Whoops. 4-6. Whitey, he's playing a rather thin line. He doesn't have much room for error.
Not as we've been able to establish, Jack, on this left lane here. That's definitely that inside angle. And if you recall when I said that Carl threw a free ball the other time, it looked like this time he held on to the ball, and that's what pointed it right into the head pin.
So he leaves the 4-6, and it appears we have the first open of the game on our hands. He shoots the 4-pin, and he has 116 through the 5th with a split, thus an open in the 6th. And now Steve Nagy has a chance to double. Steve is 21 pins down, can take care of about half of that with a hit right here. He plays this one differently, and there it is. This is what you certainly have to admire about these professional bowlers, their ability to adjust. You recall what he did on 30 previously with 2 deliveries? This time he made that minute adjustment that made the difference for him. Last time he failed to get up to that head pin. You recall he left the 1-2. This time he laid one right in the pocket. Now he goes back to 29, where he has struck previously twice. And he's looking for 3 in a row, trying to match the 3-bagger that Carl Richard threw at him earlier. Come in, you could hear him yell. He was down there on one knee at the foul line. Leaves the 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. This could be a tough one to cover. That gives Steve.
I imagine, Jack, why the sound is picking up the thumb of Steve's when it comes out of that thumb hole.
It's really popping. Did he catch him? Boy, that H-pin was spinning around down there. He didn't think he had it. Whether he was really beset with consternation or whether he was putting on a show for the fans here is always difficult to ascertain when you watch Steve Nagy, but he had quite a look when he turned around. Now Carl Richard, who opened in the 6th. Up in the 7th, on the head pin, and a getaway, he leaves the 4. This match quite close at this point. It appears they'll each have a spare in the 7th frame, and it appears that Carl Richard will have a 4-pin advantage as we pass the midway point in the first game. The people here at the Hoffman Lanes have been more than accommodating. Four pin for Carl Richard. Joe Abel and Lynn Lamensdorf, the owners of the Lanes, have done everything they could have done to make things pleasant for everyone concerned with Top Star Bowling. Harry Matthews, the manager, Paul Cerniglia, the general manager. It's been very pleasant here. Carl Richard, a strike. Looked like there were 4 pins on the deck when that one was over.
He threw really a crusher that time.
Really roared through there. So there's his strike, and Steve Nagy, who trails by 4 pins in the match, is also working on a spare. Beautiful ball. Now, Steve was more inside then than he had been previously, and he had carried over there previously, so whether or not it was intentional, I do not know, but you can't argue with the results.
I think, Jack, where Steve made an adjustment was on the approach. He moved about 2 or 3 boards left center, and that kept him inside of that second arrow.
So you folks see it's not all automatic up there on the approach and at the foul line with the delivery. Takes a lot of thinking to roll properly. There's his double. And he gives Carl Richard something to shoot at right here. $1,000 in prize money for the winner, $500 for the loser, plus that LaSalle wristwatch for both. Look out, Carl Richard. Whoop, did you see that 7-pin slip off there for you? He was watching and waiting and hoping. It did go down. He leaves the 6-10. He had a split in the 6. It's the only open that we've had in the game for either man. And he almost came up with yet another here in the 9th frame. But despite the getaway from the split, he still failed to match the double by Nagy, who at the moment is out in front. 6-10. He chops the 6 off the 10. That's his second open, and compared with that double, why, Steve has quite an advantage right here. We've had a rapid changeover as of late. A couple of weeks ago, Don Carter defeated Dick Hoover, who had stood by for a few weeks as king of the hill. Lo and behold, along came Carl Richard to rid the tournament of Don Carter. And I mean that to sound nice. And now Carl is out of that pocket. Here in the roll-off, he leaves the 2-pin on his first delivery. So the best he can do is 193. 231 for Steve Nagy if he goes all the way. Carl spares in the 10th. He needs a 10 count for 193. This, of course, is the first appearance for Steve Nagy. We'll always have a newcomer on Top Star Bowling, unless we have a tie. Then both men return. Carl Richards strikes for the 10 count in 193. 193 for Carl Richard here in his first effort in the match. Let's watch Steve Nagy. And no 7-pin. He kicked an extra point after the 7-pin stood up. Watch those knees, Steve. He usually wears those heavy bandages on his knees, does he not, Whitey?
Yes, because I imagine Steve, through the years, with so much activity on the approaches there, he probably has a little problem with his knees.
He's almost 50 years old. There's his start. We've got a few people in the audience who are a good deal older than Steve, though, and some pretty good bowlers. 190 through the 9th for Steve. A 10 count for 210 and a 17-pin lead. That strike was so important for him here at the start of the roll-off. He didn't get it. That's the one he wanted before. So there's his 210 game for Steve Nagy. 193 for Carl Richard, the defender on the show. And a difference of 17 pins. And the lead for the challenger, Steve Nagy, here at the end of the first game. A message, then let's come back and visit with one of the bowlers. The United States Senior Bowling Association is represented here today at the Hoffman Lanes, so it's only fitting that we talk for a moment with Steve Nagy.
Thank you. I know they're looking me over like I was going to join or something, but I ain't ready yet.
You have to get your average up a little bit before you get in, though.
That's right. I think it's, what, it's 60 there?
No, it's less than that. 55, is it? That's the minimum?
6 more years.
Charlie John is the leader of the group here and the president, and it's a wonderful. They're rooting for both of you men and enjoying your bowling. Steve, you're not going to do anything differently. You have a bit of a lead here at the end of the first game.
Yeah, you can blow that in one shot.
Can you?
That's right.
I noticed that you're in and out a couple of times on one particular lane.
You did notice that?
Yeah, did you?
No, I didn't. I thought I was doing the same thing.
I can see that I'm not going to get anywhere with you, so carry on, Steve.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck to Steve Nagy and to Carl Richards. And we're all set for the second game on Top Star Bowling. Carl Richards, 17 pins down, getting the second game underway in perfect fashion. Carl started his first game with a spare as opposed to the strike that Steve Nagy came up with in the first frame. Let's see if Steve answers the call right here. Isn't there? He told me he thought he was doing the same thing all the time.
Jack, a funny thing, just seated close to his, the secretary, Doc Hapstrom of the United States Senior Bowling Association. When you made a comment about Nagy, he said they didn't want that smart aleck kid in their organization.
Here's Steve. Let's see if he can take care of the 1, 2, 4, 8. What do you think? Wow, I didn't think that ball was going to drive through there for him. I didn't think he was going to have it, but he got his spare. Carl Richards started with the strike. 210 for Steve Nagy in the first game, 193 for Carl Richards. Dick Agee will be the opponent next week for the winner of this match. The winner of this match also receives the $1,000. $500 for the loser. And the LaSalle watch for each, and he was way out with that one. Leaves the rail, the 1, 2, 4, 7. Steve having a few difficulties here at the outset of the second game. I hope we didn't upset him between games with our little chat. I know he upset me, but I hope I didn't upset him. You'd like to see him bring this back and keep it close, wouldn't you? There it is. So 2 spares at the outset for Steve. Back we go to Carl Richard. 215-pounder. Four-step approach just inside that second arrow. That's his line. You watch where they put this ball down, and you don't have to watch them very long. You don't have to watch a large portion of any game to be able to tell when they put the ball down if they're going to be there. We have an interesting innovation that Steve Nagy has on display for us, and we'll pay attention to that the next time he comes up. Carl Richard has a double. Now he has 3. We're talking about an arm timer that Steve Nagy is wearing, a Joe Willman arm timer on his right wrist, and it clicks twice when the bowler is bowling properly. And it probably clicked twice then. Just briefly, the idea behind the item is that if you go into your backswing slowly enough, there will be no click, and that's proper. And then when you release the ball, there will be a click, and if you follow through, there'll be yet another. And Steve is wearing it here today.
You know, Jack, Joe Willman is one of the top instructors throughout the country, and they also have various courses in which he is the accredited instructor-teacher.
He didn't quite get there. Leaves a 2-4-5. He was trying for a double. In the first game here, Steve Nagy had 5 strikes, and so did Carl Richards. Carl had a 3-bagger, but Steve Nagy came home in front as a result of a split and a miss that Carl Richard had. There were no opens for Steve. Carl is taking care of some of that difference. Steve chops the 2 and the 4 off the 5. He opens for the first time. So he started with 2 spares, then a strike, and now a miss. Carl Richard is out in front, has started with 3 in a row. Four of them for Carl. He really took advantage of that opening presented by Steve when Steve opened in the 4th. Carl has gone out in front by 7 pins now. Could add to that lead with a hit here. Suey, he said.
Jack, that's an old-time war cry that has been tagged to Carl, in which whenever they had a bunch of strikes going, why they'd let out that war cry.
He's pretty relaxed, isn't he? Well, maybe Suey on that one. Maybe that one will tighten Carl up a little bit. Through the 4th, Steve Nagy has 64 with a strike up. Richard has started with 5 in a row. Nagy looking for a double, which he needs. He gets it. Steve Nagy went into this game with a 17-pin advantage. That string of strikes has caused that lead to diminish. Carl Richard has taken the lead. He's 50-some pins ahead right at this point, as we project a bit. Is this number 6 for Carl Richard? He's hopping and hollering up there. He's going to turn around and give us another suey back here pretty soon.
Jack, I think of all the bowlers that have been on Top Star Bowling, Carl is definitely playing this 30. He's perfect on it. Not because he's getting this string of strikes, but actually it's developed that way.
Yeah, he's left a couple of 10 pins out there, but he's been really in the groove. He has 6. And he's looking for 7. He's hot. He is hot. So, Carl Richard has started with 7 in a row. Steve is working on a double, looking for 3, bowling on 30, and looks good. Ooh, a 4-pin causes everybody to groan, including me. And he needed that one the way Carl Richard has been bowling. Carl was 7 in a row. He threw 7 in a row at the outset of the 3rd and final game against Don Carter when he defeated Carter last week. How much further he's going to go remains to be seen. Call the kids in out of the yard if you want them to watch a possible 300. Kids should be watching anyhow. There's the 4-pin. There's the spare. 113 through the 6th with a spare up for Steve Nagy, about to bowl in the 8th frame. And the 4-7 this time. 4-pin in the previous frame, and now the 4-7. Giving Steve 131 through the 7th. Looking for the spare in the 8th. And I know you're waiting for Carl Richard to get up there. A lot of bowling centers in the neighborhoods are supplementing the facilities of the school system. It's turned out to be a wonderful bowling program. There's his spare. These schools are offering bowling either as a regular course or as intramural activity. Is that his 8th strike? It might be. It is. 8 in a row for Carl Richard. As I look over Carl's history of bowling, I see no sanctioned 300 game listed. Not trying to put the whammy on him, because we certainly don't have anything with the way he rolls that ball. Let's see if he gets number 9. I bet even Steve Nagy's rooting for him at this point. This is the lane he's been sweeping those strikes on. Oh, 4-pin stops him here in the 9th frame. He could well have had it, too. He could well have had it. He hit that a little more fully than he had been carrying over there, Whitey.
Yes, we were in whispered conversation. Remember recalling what lane Jack, and he didn't sweep him as well as he swept him the other time on that left lane.
He'd been getting up there with a thin hit carrying for him on a driving ball. This time dived in just a bit too high. Leaves a 4-pin, has a chance for a tremendous game nonetheless, and he gets the 4-pin. Giving him 229 through the 8th with a spare up. He could have a 279 game if he comes back with 3 more on the lane, which he's been hitting so well, where Steve Nagy is now bowling in the 9th frame. A chance for Steve to close the gap somewhat if he can get started here. Beautiful. A very fine hit by Steve over there. Now he goes into the roll-off. We recall the toss of the coin in the first game. Carl Richard wanted to finish on a particular lane. Didn't pay off too well for him in the 10th frame of the first game. Here's Steve looking for another. Gets another. .211 for Steve, if he can get a couple of more. He was yelling for a Brooklyn, and he got it. If you want something, speak up. We could hear Steve all the way back here. He just said to no one in particular, that was so bad it was good.
Jack, story time. One time when how Steve runs him out, there was an open closet on the lane.
He did.
To his right, and he ran through the closet.
Came out with a new wardrobe. Steve ends with 208. .208 to go with his 210. And now let's see how far Carl Richard can run this one. Needs 3 for 279. A little high in the 4-7. He's playing the 30 at such an angle that the slightest mistake will cause him to fail to carry that strike, and he was high that time.
Walking a tightrope.
Playing it very, very finely. Well, that gives him 247. He could bring this back and get a 10 count for 267. The highest single so far. 257 that Dick Hoover rang up here during his streak of 4 wins on Top Star Bowling. Carl Richard needs 10 for 267. And gets him. And so for Steve Nagy, 208 for 418. Carl Richard, 267. And a total of 460, and so a 42-pin lead for Carl Richard at the end of 2 games, and we'll be back in just a moment. A chance to visit now with Carl Richard, who gave everyone such a thrill with those 8 in a row at the start of the game. And Carl, everybody here, and I'm sure even Steve Nagy was rooting for you in that frame. Did you think you were going to carry?
Well, actually, I sent the ball in a little fast and kicked it pretty hard, Jack. I was afraid of it when I let loose of it.
Mm-hmm. It well could have gone for you, though.
Oh, yes. I hit it good, but the ball wasn't rolling properly.
Mm-hmm. What about the little war cry you let out there in the middle of that string? What's that Sui all about?
Well, that's a little battle cry that we have at home when we get started real good.
And you got started pretty good. But, Carl, I can't help but reflect on a few weeks ago when Dick Hoover was 48 pins down and came back to win his match from Glenn Blakesley.
I've been thinking about that, and I'm sure Steve is, too.
You can never have enough in this game. I know that a lot of people might have the impression that this one is all over, but it's far from that.
That's right. You got 10 frames to shoot, and anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. Carl, good luck to you as we move along here.
Thank you.
And to you as well. Mr. Nagy, you folks all set? More Top Star Bowling. Well, what's in store for us here in the third and final game? Steve Nagy on 29. Down in the match, about 42 pins, trying to get that start. Maybe he'll give us a start like Richard did before. There's the 4-pin. These senior citizens who are here, United States Senior Bowling Association represented. Charlie John and his group, they're very enthusiastic, and they're really enjoying the activity here.
Jack, I want to surprise you, too. You know, in their annual tournament, they had a man that was 91 years old bowling in the tournament. Wow.
Here's Steve Nagy. Oh, dear. Well, when you're 42 pins down, that hurts. Ran right by that 4-pin. Not much you can say about that, much less explain it.
It's a good lesson. You might as well face it, Jack. It actually was carelessness upon Steve's part.
Carl Richard, now he's on the nose, crosses over, rocks the 6-pin, doesn't get the Brooklyn.
I'm sure in saying that Steve was careless, he'd be the first one to admit it on it, so it isn't anything against his ability to make a statement like that.
No, of course not. But those things happen, and the more of those you avoid, the better the scores are when it's all over. Carl covers the 6. And I'll bet that Nagy's missing that 4-pin caused a few wheels to grind in Carl Richard's head as he shot that 6-pin. So Steve starts with an open. Carl Richard with a spare. Adds to his lead and throws a strike. 11-pin advantage right there in this particular game. 4-pin to shoot in that frame. Dick Agee from the West Coast will be the opponent for the winner of this match. Wouldn't be something if we had Agee and Nagy. We'd be out of our heads by the time the match was over. Steve needs a string here. Not just the double that he's trying for right now. He needs a string. And the 5-pin doesn't go for him. Steve had 210, 208, 418. Carl Richard had 193, 267 for the highest single in the series so far, and a total of 460. Steve after the 5-pin, and he gets it. So he has 29 through the second with a spare. Carl Richard trying for a double to further increase his lead. I mentioned Dick Agee, some of those who will be coming along in the future. Ray Bluth, Glenn Allison. There's a double for Richard. Who's some of the others, Whitey? Bluth, Allison.
Kombluski.
Golubiewski.
Joseph. I think we got some fine matches coming up.
We certainly do have. We've had some dandies so far. In addition, that ladies' match is still in the offing. Shirley Garms and Laverne Carter. Let's see if Carl Richards, who started with a spare, can get a three-bagger right here. He's trying to close things out early against Steve Nagy. And the 2-pin. He's going through a lot of antics at the foul line.
It's interesting, Jack, to hear the comment from the United States seniors group over here as they give the OOOs and trying to coach, maybe help the ball a little bit.
There's one thing about Carl Richards. He's had a few opens here, but most of them have been because of splits that have come about. He did have a miss in the 9th frame of the first game, when I'm referring to last week as well against Don Carter. Made very few mistakes shooting those spares. But Steve Nagy is now looking back to that 3rd frame when he left that 5-pin. Because he could use the 3 in a row that he would have had. There is a 62-pin difference. Carl Richard has had a double in this game. Nagy has had 2 strikes, but a miss and a spare along with it. He's looking for his first double. Down the head pin, comes up with another split, leaves the 6, 7, 10. So Steve is drifting a bit out there in the lanes, going all over him. If you look back on Steve's history, it's a very interesting one, and he takes up almost a whole page himself. Bowled in 1939 in his first ABC tournament. He's won the doubles, the all events, been on the winning team. He covers the 6-10, leaves the 7. That's his second open of the game, a split and a miss. He won the BPAA All-Star in 55. He's been in the finals 8 times, finals twice at the World's Invitational. A host of league records, including one league average of 217 for a season. Hey, the 4-pin. So Carl Richard gets on a strike again. Steve Nagy through 5 frames has 77. Carl Richard through 4 has 89 with a strike working. Carl had 5 strikes in the first game, 9 in the second. He's had 3 so far in this one. There's that 4-6. So the match isn't over. Steve Nagy came up with a split in the 5th, and now Carl Richards splits in the 6th, and that's what he did in the 6th frame of the first game. And it was the same split, the 4-6. So even with his splits, he has been consistent. Goes for the 4-pin. Gets the 9 count and has 117 through the 6th. Steve Nagy open in the 5th. Leaves the 4-pin here in the 6th. Carl Richard cannot give us the 700 series. Even if he were to go all the way, he'd be 3 pins shy. A week ago, he had 679. There's the spare for Nagy in the 6th. $1,000 here, riding in the balance. That goes to the winner. $500 to the loser, the LaSalle wristwatch for each. And to the winner, the privilege and the honor of a reappearance on Top Star Bowling to take on the next challenger, who in this case will be Dick Agee. And the 1-2.
Jack, the bowling game, just like any other sports, has different unusual records and achievements, and to Steve Nagy belongs the record of having thrown a ball the farthest. In a promotional stunt some years ago, where he threw a ball actually off of Pikes Peak.
What'd he leave?
2 Alps.
There's the 1-2. Carl Richard up now. Carl well out in front in this match. There's the old familiar line. Nagy's having a little fun with him now.
Don't you sort of cringe up here when Richards hits on that lane 30, the way that ball sneaks down there?
That's a beautiful thing to behold. Now Carl over on 29 looking for his double. He's going to get hit with something else. I tell you, it's not that Steve has given up in the match, and he is quite a bit down in this match, out of reach for him. But he's just acknowledging the ability of Carl Richard and the fact that he's having difficulties. He wants to know if Carl Richard can help him.
Normally in an exhibition, Jack, what they're referring to, 2 of the bowlers will make an attempt by crossing the balls over. And that's what Steve was asking Carl to come up there and perform.
He wants Carl Richard to help him out.
This is not Steve Nagy out of character, actually. When he does put on an exhibition, it's usually tremendous. He's one of the great stars and plus a great comedian.
He wants to shoot 2 balls. Going for the 6, 7, 10. He might not need 2 balls. No, he covers. Gets the 6, 10. Was full on. Fans enjoy him. I know that you're enjoying watching him. He's a dandy. Takes care of 8 frames for each. Steve comes up in the 9th. He has 121 through the 8th. He's checking the scoreboard. Forget it, Steve. Have fun. And the 2, 4, 5, 8. He just said, I'm sure glad I'm getting 500, because I'm not earning it. Oh, dear. Yeah, he said, look out. He didn't think he was going to get that 5 cents, but he did. He gets the spare in the 9th. Well, I tell you, Nagy having a game like this is like Musial going 0 for 5 or Don Hudson dropping a pass, because he has proven over the years that he's one of the best. Here's Carl Richard looking for 3. He crosses over, leaves the baby split, the 3-10. Bet Richards is thinking that Steve's got both these lanes messed up. Carl with a chance for a pretty good series here. have the 200 game. And he covers. Gets the 310. Picks that split. He could go on to a 215 and a 675. He had 679 last week to defeat Carter. Carl is now in the roll-off in the 10th frame. Started this game with a 460 series. And the 10-pin stays. So 184 and 204 is the best that Carl can have.
It's good for the average bowlers and beginners, Jack. Notice how Carl stands to the left of the approach when shooting for the 10-pin.
Carl Richard gets a spare in the 10th. Here's Carl Richard. He doesn't quite get up there. Ends with an even 200. And a 660. Steve Nagy's telling me he lost the match.
This shot is for you ladies. I throw the spare ball first because I got enough time with the second ball.
Okay, can you hear that? He's going to throw the spare ball first. He said he knows he's lost the match. And he also says that he knows he's getting $500 and he wants to earn the money, so he's got that ball spinning. And he's going to start that one down the lane, spinning. Let's see where in the double it's going to go. He said, I hope you have enough film.
Only on Top Star Bowling could you see this.
And now he's going to throw the spare ball. Now he gets his strike. Isn't that something?
Jack, the ball.
The ball is still going. Let's see where the ball goes. The ball is still going. Let's see if he's going to throw another. And he might still do it. Oh, that stopped him. Hey, it's coming back. He's a dandy, this Nagy. He's a dandy, Steve Nagy. Oh, we got the ball down there. Oh, dear. Let's see what Steve does. This is a Steve Nagy production on Top Star Bowling.
Oh, no.
He's going to get the other one. This is the way not to behave at the bowling lane, but it is the way to have some fun. I don't know what in the world Steve Nagy had. But Carl Richard had 200 for 660, and we'll be back in just a moment. Before we go any further, let me apply the ABC rules to the antics put on by the gentleman to my right. 131 was his final because he actually didn't roll the ball in that 10th frame. And 545 was the total for Mr. Steve Nagy, who gave us quite a performance here today. Steve, congratulations. Nice to have been with you.
Thank you.
Here's a very attractive LaSalle wristwatch for you, along with the check for, well, that's for $1,000.
Yeah, don't forget that.
$500, Steve.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Glad to be here, and just hope I could have done better, but you got a good man up there in Carl, and I think he's going to go a long way here. You keep your eye on him.
Okay, fine, Steve. And he's talking about Carl Richard with a 660 series and his second victory on Top Star Bowling. Your LaSalle for you, Carl.
Thank you, Jack.
Another $1,000 check.
Thanks, sir.
And you come back 1 week from today to take on Dick Agee from San Jose, and that should be another fine match.
Well, I'm sure that Dick will bowl real well here.
Thank you for the fine series and the thrill with the 8 in a row. Gentlemen, it's been wonderful having you with us. How about a nice hand once again for our two contestants, Steve Nagy and Carl Richard. And now, tune us in next week, will you, for more Top Star Bowling. It's going to be Carl Richard, and his opponent will be Dick Agee, and you'll enjoy that one. Jack Buck says thanks for your time this time. Till next time, so long. Top Star Bowling has been presented by
LaSalle, the precision jeweled watch.
Bowling equipment by Brunswick, the #1 name in bowling. Top Star Bowling is sanctioned by the American Bowling Congress.